When you're looking for a biological virus, you use a microscope or some other laboratory device to try and identify the virus. But when you're looking for a computer virus, it's even more difficult because you can't see it at all. It's hidden in some piece of software or perhaps already buried in your operating system. Today we take a look at computer viruses, their cure and prevention on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte magazine, and BIX, the Byte Information Exchange. In print and online, Byte and BIX serve computer professionals worldwide with detailed information on new hardware, software, and technologies.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, you know, in the old days when some disease went through the country, the medicine man went from town to town selling his snake oil. Now that computer viruses are spreading throughout the country, the software houses are coming up with their snake oil. Dozens of antivirus programs like Vaccine, Immunize, Disk Watcher, Data Physician, Mace, and on and on and on. Gary, there's a kind of folklore developing around the guys who create these computer viruses. Do you have to be a programming genius to create one?
Well, Stuart, not really. There's really two issues: the creation of the virus program itself and getting it installed. The simplest case, a virus program would just find the beginning point of a program and jump to a little piece of code that's been patched in, and if it's the right day, then it zeroes your disk out, and otherwise it just passes the control back to the program. Breaking into a bulletin board isn't very difficult because most of those bulletin boards are based on PCs, and they weren't built to have the protection in the first place. Breaking into a mini computer mainframe is more difficult, obviously. But it would be nice to see some of these efforts going into virus programs, put into programs that are really useful for the industry instead. You know?
Gary, today we're going to take a look at computer viruses. We'll find out how they infect your system. We'll give you advice on how to prevent them, and if it's too late, how to locate and destroy viruses. We're going to begin today by visiting NASA's Ames Research Center at Moffett Field, California, to find out how they dealt with that massive computer virus that attacked over 6,000 systems on the ARPANET network last November.
NASA's Ames Research Center in Mountain View, California, is best known for its contributions to planetary exploration and advanced aircraft designs. But recently, Ames became the latest victim of a computer virus, a damaging piece of code released into its computer network through a gateway, in this case, electronic mail. The viral intruder was discovered and removed by the Ames Computer Network architect in collaboration with the University of California. The virus is not hard to find if you know where to look.
If you look here, this arch attempt, that is attempting to open up a connection and break in to a remote machine. In this case, the machine's name is Wilbur. Here, the virus is also, another copy of the virus is attacking a machine on the East Coast at Langley Research Center. And here is actually the virus going through this user UCB netstat. He's looking through the routing table to attack other machines that are that forward messages from this machine to other machines on the network.
Although no data files were lost nor system files damaged, Ames spent about $70,000 to find and destroy the self-replicating virus. Since then, NASA's major California research center has taken steps to keep the intruder out.
We installed the protections that we had devised very early in the process on all of our systems, put them under test against a known copy of the virus, and let it bang against those systems for a period of time to ensure that they wouldn't be reinfected.
The vulnerability of an open network is not unique to Ames, but the problem of providing information to a wide group of people without exposing the data to viral pranks is not easily solved.
The more protections you put on the system, the less user-friendly they become, and it's always a trade-off between the reasonableness of the protections and how they affect you.
Joining us in the studio now is John Dickinson. John is director of PC Labs, a division of PC Magazine. And next to John, Andrew Siebold, a member of the board of the National LAN Labs and publisher of Outlook on Professional Computing. Gary?
Andy, how do viruses manifest themselves? What do they do?
Well, first of all, they attack your computer programs and they corrupt them, and they can corrupt them in a lot of varying ways. There are some viruses that are quote-unquote benign, and they get in and they just flash up on the screen, gotcha, hello. But more importantly, the viruses that everybody's concerned about today are the ones that get in and they manipulate your data, they corrupt your programs, and they make changes that you're not aware of and that you don't know and you don't have any control over. They can go so far as to actually change data in an accounting file, they can change a word processing file, and they can multiply themselves from one application to another application, pretty soon taking over your entire hard disk, so none of your programs will run or operate properly.
Before you even get to know
That's right, before you even know they're there.
What's the motivation behind people that do these things? You got any idea, John?
It baffles me. I mean, there is potential for criminal intent, of course, there always has been, but it seems to me that the viruses that have been coming on so far have been nothing much more than malicious mischief.
Okay. Now, there's also, we heard about worms and viruses and Trojan horse and so forth. What are the differences between these kinds of programs?
Well, let's see. A virus will actually corrupt programs to the extent that they can in turn corrupt other programs. So they will work on executable files, they will install themselves inside the executable file, much as a real human virus installs itself inside of you, and then you can in turn infect me. A worm is usually a program that just duplicates itself and makes copies of itself all over the place. And a Trojan horse is one that has a program that's damaging inside an otherwise innocent-looking program.
Now, you have an example here of a virus, which you're going to show us what a virus does to your hard disk in this case, and then a vaccine program to counterattack it.
Right.
Would you run through the virus first for us?
Okay, let's also, just for starters, say that this is an extremely dumb and innocent virus.
Okay.
It's one that would not probably present itself to you. Viruses tend to be very quiet in their operation. This one's very noisy, so that number one, we can demonstrate
demo
it.
purposes.
This is just for demo purposes.
A dumb demo virus.
A dumb demo, a dumb demo virus.
Okay.
This is a clean directory on a PC, and all these programs are perfectly good. If I was to run WordStar, for example, and here it is, and it's fine, it's just great, no problem at all. So I'll leave WordStar, and then I'll run this virus program.
So you're going to load the virus.
I'm going to call virus up and say, hello, be virus. And he says, all COM files on this disk will be infected, which no self-respecting virus would do, and you are warned, haha, and so on.
So we know we now have an infected situation.
We know it, and in fact, if I was careful and I was looking at my disk in this case, I would find out that these programs are infected. But again, a self-respecting virus wouldn't even go and change the directory. You would not even know it was there.
So, for example, you see different dates, and if you're really careful, different file sizes in some of those files.
Exactly. Now, different file sizes would be hard to do without, but it's also something the user doesn't check very often. So now if I run WordStar, we're going to find out that our virus is, in fact, there. And he came by and ran his thing.
The message there told us that it was installed.
It was there. And if I come back and execute, if I leave the system, it will be there. If I go to another directory and run WordStar, where it's been copied to in it's damaged condition, it announces that it's there. And when I leave here,
it's gone in and changed all
these
files.
files.
Okay.
And it's done.
So in other words, the copy of WordStar now carries the infection with it
Yes,
to
wherever I
potentially
go.
the next user who might have taken that copy.
So if I take this copy of WordStar and I give it to you, Stuart, and you take it home and put it on your PC, it's going to start infecting files in any directory that you operated on in your PC or any disk.
Okay, now you have a Flu Shot Plus program now that's supposed to detect some of these things?
Right. The Flu Shot Plus will detect programs that are working at the software level on your programs, and we'll be able to detect this virus if I run it. Okay. Okay, let's put it back. And now if I run WordStar in this directory, where again the corrupt version of WordStar has been installed, here it is, we'll run it, and FluShot comes up and says, here's this program, it's trying to mess with your files. Now what does mess with your files mean is it's working on the written copies of your files. It's modifying the files on your disk.
So the first thing FluShot did was find that there was a virus in your system by warning you. Okay, what happens next?
Now it says to me it's trying to modify all these files, and FluShot gives you the ability to go ahead and let the program modify files, and the reason that it has to do that is that any self-respecting ordinary application program, in order to do its work, will be out working on your data files all the time. Otherwise it's not doing very much for you at all. So in this case, to let the program go, I'll just let it go and ruin all my files. And when I leave WordStar, it will be all the files
No,
are good.
that's detecting the virus through preventing a write operation on the disk. Now, there are other ways in which the virus could operate, though, right?
That is
that we
correct.
could get around that.
That is correct. You can write a program that goes in at the hardware level and controls your hardware and doesn't let the operating system know what's actually going on. Flu shot and programs like it depend on viruses being, let's say, well behaved. They actually go in through software facilities that are available on the PC and modify your files.
So just because you have a vaccine-type program like a Flu Shot Plus doesn't mean you're protected from viruses.
Right. It means you're protected from what I would call relatively minor viruses.
And in fact, tell us about the original Flu Shot.
Well, the original Flu Shot was in fact corrupted by a virus.
And that's why there's a Flu Shot Plus.
That's correct.
Okay.
Andy, real quickly, what is it? Where would you be in danger of getting the virus into your system?
You know, if you have a standalone system and you're buying all off-the-shelf software from known vendors, and you don't exchange disks with people, and you don't talk on bulletin board systems through modems and things like that, chances are you're pretty safe, all right? But if somebody brings a disk over and you exchange it, if you call a bulletin board and you download some programs that are available, or if somebody says, hey, take my WordStar file even, right, and bring it up on your system and work on it, viruses can be transmitted that way. You just can't tell. So you have to be real careful. If you're attached to a network, it complicates the problem dramatically because you don't know where on the network a virus can get interjected and what it will do on a network.
Okay, John, Andy, we're going to ask both of you to come back a little bit later in the program, and we want to talk about safe computing practices. Also, in just a minute, we'll take a look at some vaccine programs for the Macintosh. First of all, a visit to a small business that was infected by a computer virus to find out what they did about it. Wendy Woods reports from Santa Clara, California.
The idea seemed harmless enough. Susan would take home a data disk to continue her work on her home computer. Little did she know the next morning that same innocent-looking disk was coming back to work infected with a data-killing virus. The virus would come to be called by the name of the day it struck, Friday the 13th.
I thought I had a hard disk crash at first, but after I delved into it a little bit, I found that the disk was fine. Mechanically it was fine, but there was no software in there. The boot tracks were gone, the system tracks were gone, the file allocation table was gone. It was just scrambled. It was still there, and the root directory was just absolutely trashed.
The virus, which came from a game on Susan's home computer, ultimately forced Jim to wipe his hard disk clean. And while he hasn't gotten rid of it completely, he has the virus under control, thanks to a program called Tracer, which blocks the virus from doing damage. Jim was lucky, though. All the hard disk data, records he keeps for his precious metals lab, had been backed up.
I consider myself very, very fortunate that I forced myself, even when I just didn't want to back everything up.
Because the virus in here is so insidious, hard disk backup is no longer optional for this small business. In fact, as Jim Mount said, if he hadn't backed up his files, that virus might have put him out of business. In Santa Clara, California, for the Computer Chronicles, I'm Wendy Woods.
Joining us in the studio now is Robert Capon, president of HJC Software, the makers of Virex. Next to Robert is Jack McDonald, president of Magna, the makers of Empower security software for the Macintosh. Gary?
Jack, one of the things that's happened in our personal computer industry in general is there really hasn't been any access control. You know, you start your computer system up and put disks in it, and the second issue that we're talking about, the creation of the virus is the first one, and access to the computer system is the second one. Talk to us a little bit about control of access.
Well, you know, as you stated, there really hasn't ever been any security on Macintoshes especially. It's just there's no security to breach, so therefore it's really easy to get in. Therefore, a virus-type program can go in and attack any program on any hard disk, any floppy. And with an access control program such as Empower, you can limit who can make changes to your programs, and therefore prohibit viruses from attaching themselves to any program.
All right, you've got another approach, Robert, which is Virex. And let me ask you, it's not quite a vaccine program, is it? How would you describe Virex?
Well, it's a very complementary approach to the security awareness product that Magna markets. It's a Class 3 product, and that means what it does is detect known computer viruses, and if a virus is present, it gives you the ability to eliminate the virus by wiping out the virus and restoring infected files to their pre-infected state.
The key word there is they're known viruses, right? You have
That's
to
correct.
go in there and look for patterns and so forth that those particular viruses would create.
That's right. We're looking for known viruses, and if and when new viruses occur, we plan to update the product with the ability to detect and combat those viruses.
What does that mean, a known virus?
One that has been diagnosed as being a virus with known characteristics, and one that we are aware of. In this industry, there's a lot of hysteria about viruses, and there are reports every day about possible new viruses, and most of those are typically not computer viruses. They're just other phenomena, other problems that arise.
Could you give us a demonstration of Virex and show us how it would work on the Mac?
Certainly.
And just give us kind of play-by-play as you go here, Robert. What's
Basically, we remind users, we give them an important word about computer viruses, and we remind them that we combat only known computer viruses. We also emphasize the importance of backing up software, because we think that in addition to using a product like this, it's very important to have good backup procedures to use reliable and reputable software.
Okay, so you have Virex up now on the Mac.
That's right. And when it comes up, it has a help screen that provides online help to the user and providing very useful operating instructions. And basically, in this part of the screen, we have 3 action icons that enable you to diagnose, repair, and to get online help.
So where's the virus right now in this system? You're going to put one in there?
Well, in this case, Virex shows you the diskettes that are that it can see that are loaded into the system, and we toggle icons on and off to activate them. This diskette here has programs on it that are infected with the Scores virus, and we can diagnose that diskette by clicking on one icon. Again, this is designed not to be an extremely easy program to use, point-and-click type of interface.
Okay, so we now
What's it telling
us that we have the Scores virus in the
That's
second
right.
drive.
It tells you infections were detected, consult the above listing. And what it does is it tells you the diskette, the file, and the actual program that's infected.
Okay, Rob, you can now repair that disk?
That's right.
Okay.
Let me demonstrate that. We repair the disk by clicking on one icon.
And what is it doing then when it's repairing the disk?
Right now, what it's doing is it's re-examining the disk for infections, and then it gives you the option file by file to repair them and to restore them to their original state. Now, we're able to do that because we know the exact characteristics of these viruses. We know exactly how they alter programs, and as a result, we know exactly how to repair the files and to undo the damage that was done by the viral infection.
And so it's completed now, and you have removed the virus from that one floppy disk.
That's right. And if we were to re-examine that, for example, we'll see that...
so you can do that diagnose again to see if it's clean?
Right, and if you did that, you'd find that the diskette was clean.
Okay. I'm going to ask you if you can slide the keyboard over there to Jack and get out of Virex so we can take a look at this other approach here. Jack, while Robert is doing that, tell us about, you have a program called Empower, which talks about, which deals with security, as you and Gary were talking about before. What exactly does it do?
Empower is a full-featured access control and automatic data encryption product for the Macintosh. We have ability to use multiple users and multiple groups on the Macintosh, and also at the same time doing transparent data encryption to really ensure that data is protected.
Okay, and from a virus point of view now, is this, having this kind of security system, protection against a virus?
Yes, you can use Empower to help prevent the spread of viruses. It's a prevention mechanism. You can lock up all of your, for instance, let's go into
all the really important data files and so forth.
Really important data files. You can put them into folders that you don't give anybody write access to.
So you're into the program and show us how it works.
All right. This is just a normal Macintosh desktop, just like everybody is used to seeing. The thing that we've added since Empower's been added to this system is we are in the background protecting who can access what privileges, what things. So for instance, I've got a folder here that contains all of Apple's programs. And you'll notice that with Empower installed, there's an extra little pencil with a slash through it, which means that, nobody has write access to this folder, to these programs, so no virus can go out and attach themselves to that.
So, in other words, if some other user came in and worked on my Mac, they couldn't access and write to those files.
Sure, they could still use the programs, which you may want them to go ahead and do, but then they couldn't modify those programs.
You have various layers of security?
That's correct. For each, let's see here.
Okay.
Yeah, for each folder, we can have, there's 3 things you can specify. You can specify to C folders, to C files, to make changes. You can also specify which groups are doing that. Let's bring up one that has no privilege set. Here's one. So we just do a get privileges here in order to set privileges on this folder. And you see that it's not signed to anybody currently, and that everybody has complete access rights to everything in that folder.
So you can have different privileges attached to different folders inside the system.
Each folder would have their own privileges specified.
Now, Jack, does this prevent the hardware level corruption of the disk?
No, this is a purely software technique that we're using.
So it's assuming that the virus is going through the operating system to make the various calls and things of that sort.
Another real nice feature we have for viruses is the ability to disable the floppy drives, where you can specify that the floppy drive should never be used. So you boot up your machine with your hard disk, and nobody can insert a floppy disk that may be contaminated.
Okay, so this protects you from outsiders. It doesn't really protect you from yourself, though, if you bring in a corrupted piece of software.
That's correct. If you have write access to anything, then the virus program could be able to attach to it.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. In just a minute, we're going to have some advice for you on safe computing practices to help you avoid the problem of viruses. Stay with us. Back with us in the studio is John Dickinson of PC Labs and Andy Siebold of Outlook. Gary?
Andy, you work with LAN Labs. You come up with a set of rules or guidelines to abide by for safe computing practices. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, well, the National LAN Lab is a nonprofit organization, first of all, and there are a number of vendors in the community who are involved in supporting the operation. And the set of guidelines that they came up with for quote-unquote safe computing are things that make sense. You know, you don't put a piece of software on your machine if you don't know the origin of it. You don't swap software with people. You don't. If you call a bulletin board, you have to be very careful. You have to know the bulletin board. You have to know who runs it. You have to be very careful of the types of programs that you download. Basically, you need to know the origin of every program that comes into your system. You need to know the origin of every file that comes into your system, who has access to your computer. There's security issues as far as when you're not near your computer, who can get on it, how it's connected to a network, how it's connected to mainframes and other computers which are external. The recent ArborNet thing is a good indication of what can happen. I mean, it just takes off like wildfire. And basically, it's all common sense. There are some very, very important things. You have to back up your files, and you have to back up your programs and your system files, and you have to be very religious about that. You have to have a set of known good programs, because the only cure, if you have a virus that infects your system, you're going to have to dump it. You're going to have to lose all your data. Then you're going to have to bring it back up and reformat it, and then you're going to have to reinstall your programs, and at the point of reinstallation, you're going to have to check the ones that you're reinstalling to make sure you don't duplicate the problem again.
Well, well, John, actually, this would be a good question for you. Is how effective are these antivirus programs, like the offshoots of flu shot and so forth?
At some level, they're effective. I mean, to the extent that viruses are well behaved, they're effective. At least in the PC environment, it's perfectly legitimate to write a virus that legitimate, that's the wrong word, to write a virus that works at a software level and corrupts files that way, but it's also not difficult to write one that works down at the hardware level and is below the level that a virus protection, a vaccine program can detect.
John, are any of these so-called vaccine software programs effectively, essentially useless? I mean, they don't really do anything?
Well, useless is a little bit of a strong word. I think that there's some measure of protection that you can get, but what I'm concerned is that people will get a false sense of security. I think they're protected against everything.
Yeah, Andy, I wanted to ask you about that, because I know the LAN Labs did not endorse any vaccine software, and I was wondering why.
Well, there were two reasons. Number one is some of the members of the LAN Lab felt that there was a potential here for somebody to interject a virus into the computer community and then make money by actually coming out with a vaccine, all right? So they were concerned about that. The other is that there are so many different types of virus, there are so many different types of games that programmers can play, that to endorse that type of thing there isn't one that does it all.
Finally, in the PC Lab study, did you come up with any particular vaccine programs that the magazine's recommending?
Nope, we're going to do another one pretty soon. Take a look.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. That's our look at computer viruses. We'll be back in just a minute with this week's Computer News.
The Random Access file this week, DigiPro has announced a new form of non-volatile storage, which it calls the flash disk. It essentially uses EEPROM technology to electronically erase and reprogram the memory on a chip. DigiPro says that the flash disk chips can be reprogrammed within the system by an end user. And flash disk comes on an add-in board and is based on Intel CMOS flash memory technology. DigiPro says the flash disk supports MS-DOS and the VAX environment, and both 16 and 32-bit architectures. DigiPro sees the initial market as laptop computers and CAD systems. A 5-megabyte version is due out in the first quarter of the year, with a 300-megabyte flash disk promised later in the year. Microsoft has announced another delay in the release of Word 4.0 for the Macintosh. The company says the delay is due to continuing efforts at optimizing the speed and memory requirements of the program. Microsoft says Word 4.0 should be out by the end of February. Meanwhile, Forbes magazine says Microsoft is among the 10 most profitable companies in the country. It came in 6th and was the only computer company in the top 10. The only other computer company in the top 25 was Sun Microsystems. The Software Publishers Association has gotten into the Atari-Nintendo battle. The SPA has publicly criticized Nintendo for attempting to control the game cartridge market for Nintendo game consoles. Nintendo machines will only read a cartridge that includes a proprietary Nintendo chip. Atari is suing Nintendo for restraint of trade and says it has found a way to duplicate the Nintendo chip. The SPA says the Nintendo practice sets a dangerous precedent for computer software. Sony says it wants a piece of the resurging video and computer game business. It has announced the formation of a new division to write and market video and game software. The wholly owned subsidiary is called CGS ImageSoft. Sony is projecting first-year sales of $8 million. The Army is playing its own video games these days with a massive real-time simulation of Star Wars, or SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative. The Army's war game involves a Cray XMP supercomputer connected to 8 mini supercomputers connected to 30 mainframes. The Army says the experiment will enable them to synchronize all Earth and space-based SDI assets within 4 microseconds. Finally, there's a new kind of PC fax board, the anti-junk fax PC board. The Complete PC says its new CFax 9600 board allows the user to screen an incoming fax on the computer display before it gets printed. So if it is junk fax mail, you can dump it, clear the line, and save on paper. That's it for this week's Random Access. I'm Cynthia Steele.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte magazine, and VIX, the Byte Information Exchange. In print and online, Byte and VIX serve computer professionals worldwide with detailed information on new hardware, software, and technologies.
For a transcript of this week's Computer Chronicles, send $4 to PTV Publications, Post Office Box 701, Kent, Ohio 44240. Please indicate program date.